what is neuromarketing?
Essentially, it's just neuroscience, but from a marketing perspective. There is the reptilian brain, which is basically the part of your brain that keeps you safe. But then there's the other two parts of the brain, which are very much involved in the decision process. One of those is the neocortex, which is the least evolved aspect of our brains. This is the logical part of the brain. And this is where most entrepreneurs focus. And they focus on that area because they feel like that is what makes people make a decision. But that's where we're wrong. Very few decisions are done purely in the logical brain. Only things like very low transactional ones where you don't even need to think about it. But for significant decisions, they're often made in the limbic system, which is the emotional brain. And when you understand that, it helps you to connect deeply with your customers and to be able to get to the core of their identity, which is like the holy grail for any marketer and any entrepreneur.
Welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the show where military mindset meets the spirit of the puppy. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and review. This is the best way to stay in the loop when we drop new content. Don't forget, the conversation continues in our brand new Spear and Clover community group. Check us out on Discord or follow the link in our bio to join this free group for entrepreneurs or wantrepreneurs. This is where you get to join the conversation. You can get to know other followers of the show, hear more from our guests, and pick up resources that can help you grow your business. Hey, entrepreneurs, does any of this sound familiar? Have you hired only A players? Purchased the latest fire plays from so-called gurus, consistently almost become an elite organization, only to have it result in talented employees regressing to mediocrity, tactical plays spiking performance and then fading away quickly, managers losing discipline and hunger and then leaving or just coasting? Do you really think the difference between you and the industry-leading team is a hire or a slick new marketing play? That's the same tired crap my Chicago Bears have shoved down my throat for over 30 years. Meanwhile, the Green Bay Packers have had two coaches in 50 years, they've had two quarterbacks for 20 years, and they're a contender every single year. Many leaders buy the best playbooks, draft the best talent, and they hire the best coaches, and yet year after year, they return without trophies. Who could blame them? Most business coaches, consultants, and so-called gurus only sell tactical playbooks designed to provide a brief spike followed by a return to business as usual. The truth is, winning is simple. You need a clear North Star supported by managers and role players that have absolutely zero uncertainty about how they can help their team win today. Our simple program helps you become a dynasty organization from top to bottom. Dynasty Defined not only helps you structure a team that's capable of consistently winning championships, but once you do, they'll be writing their own playbooks, recruiting the best talent, and calling their own plays from the field. So, the choice is yours. Continue to hope that the next hire or brand new marketing play will finally solve all your problems, or commit to winning permanently, roll up your sleeves, and let's get started defining your dynasty. I am beyond proud to announce that we are now accepting applicants for Dynasty Defined. Cohorts are limited to 8 entrepreneurs and they fill up quickly, so head on over to spearandclover.com now and claim your spot. I can't wait to see you on the inside. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Spear and Clover podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jason Skisick, and I am joined today by my brother from another mother, Vince Warnock. Vince, how are you, man?
I am fantastic, man. Anytime you and I get to hang out is going to be a damn good day, that's for sure.
Yeah, I feel like every time we've spoken, it's like, wow, the time's up already. What can we do? Like, I feel like we need to get together, sit around a bonfire with some drinks and cigars at some point. So
There
Vince,
will definitely be some scotch. Yeah.
oh yeah, there you
sure.
go. I will drink scotch with you, sir. Vince hosts a podcast that I've been on. It's called Chasing the Insights. He also is an unbelievable keynote speaker and coach of others under that same name, Chasing the Insights. But I'm not the best person here that can describe what you do, Vince. You are. So why don't you tell the folks at home exactly what it is you do and where you're coming to us from?
Oh my goodness. Well, I am coming from Wellington, New Zealand, so I'm at the other end of the world. And we are in the future, by the way. It's the following day from whenever you're listening to this. So I can tell you, really good news. The world hasn't ended and you're all still awesome. So it's a good day. Look, I'll give you a quick kind of background on me to kind of understand where I'm at now is probably the easiest way. But I've been kind of in the marketing and startup world for a number of years now. more than I'd like to admit, and kind of came off the back of selling my largest startup and became the chief marketing officer at Cigna Insurance. So over that time, kind of built my career, like that's pretty much the pinnacle dream job for most marketers. The pay's ridiculous, the bonuses are ridiculous. I got to work on some incredible jobs there. Like, honestly, I got to work with some really advanced AI and blockchain technology, and do some really innovative stuff. And as a result, I got the results there, doubled the revenue of a Fortune 100 company, which is, nothing to scoff at over 5 years. And also got the recognition, got a bunch of awards, got recognized by Adobe as one of the top 50 marketers, all that kind of stuff. Published my first book when I'm there, and I'm miserable. Like, everything on paper should have been incredible. And I sat there feeling really guilty because everyone wanted that job and I had it and I didn't want it at all. I just was so unfulfilled. And that was the revelation for me. So that drove me to what I'm doing now, which is getting back to what I'm really, really passionate about, which is helping people, and more importantly, helping entrepreneurs. And that's what I do. I bring all my years and years of experience and actually help entrepreneurs to get seen, help them to stand out in a rather crowded and rather white noise kind of environment. So I do that through neuromarketing. So I coach a lot of entrepreneurs around neuromarketing and understanding the neuroscience of decision-making and marketing. But I also do that through helping them to build their pillars of thought leadership and kind of get them to really stand out. And through all of that, I mean, this is where it gets really random, Jason. Through all of that, I accidentally created a publishing company. I'm working on NFT projects, anything that is different, that is going to add value to a lot of these entrepreneurs. So, and of course, it led me to one of my huge passions, and I know is your passion as well, which is podcasting. And I've just had an absolute blast doing the Chasing the Insights podcast and meeting amazing people like yourself around the world as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as you're even talking, I'm just like, this is one of my people. I love this guy. I loved you the moment we started talking. I just think there's an affinity, and I think you're authentic, and I think you help people. I guess the first question I would have, and it's one that I ask myself often, is what is it about helping entrepreneurs what do you love about it? Why is it that you're drawn to that so strongly?
Oh my goodness. I'm drawn to it so strongly because of something that happened to me. So I'll take you right back. This is a not very nice kind of story because I grew up in a really abusive household. So I don't know my birth parents, but I got put with a family, and the father was straight out of jail. He was a convicted felon who was a drug addict, and my mum was alcoholic. So great environment to bring up kids, not. But at age 11, so for me, by the way, school was kind of like my happy place. It was kind of, the place I really liked to be. But age 11, I discovered something that I'd never found before. And that was an incredibly inspirational teacher. And he was the type of person that would always challenge you, but challenge you in a really positive way and a really cheeky way as well. Because part of my problem is I'm in a really poor neighborhood. Like, honestly, I grew up in massive poverty. And, most of the kids in my class, in fact, all the kids in my class really had no money. They all grew up in the same kind of environment, all grew up in abuse. And our teacher was getting us to do these projects. And he said, right, you got to do a project, you got to write it up, you got to draw some pictures, you can do whatever, you can write a poem about them, do a crossword, doesn't really matter, but you have to do an oral presentation on it. And he reminded the class and said, don't forget, you got to prepare for your oral presentations. And I kind of scoffed. I made some cheeky little 11-year-old noise again. Pfft. And he goes, what was that? And I went, oh, why do we have to do an oral presentation? And he goes, oh, it's going to prepare you for the real world, Vince. And I said, when in the real world are any of us going to have the opportunity to do oral presentations? And he goes, how about now? And I went, what? And he called me up in front of the class, called my bluff, and said, right, Vince is going to talk for 5 minutes. Class, what subject is he going to talk on? And obviously, being the super creative people that 11-year-olds are, they came up with the egg. So I had to talk about an egg for 5 minutes. I'm kind of freaking out up there in front of everyone. I'm like, what the hell is going on? What am I going to speak on? The only thing in my head was that saying, what came first, the chicken or the egg? So when he said your time starts now, that's what came out of my mouth. And then my brain switched to this other mode. And I just I just started talking, and I would say something funny and everyone would laugh. So I'd pull that thread, and then I'd say something that's slightly inspirational and everyone would kind of gasp. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And I kept pulling these threads and kind of, I don't want to use the term manipulating the people, but kind of, moving them around and going on this journey with me. And then at the end, he goes, right, you got 20 seconds left. And I was like, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, so obviously the chicken came first. I have no idea what I spoke about in the middle, but that's all I remember is the beginning and the end. And everyone kind of laughed and cheered and all this. And he turned around and he said, oh, Vince, that was amazing. I said, oh, thanks. Like I was being real, smug. And he goes, no, no. And he turned me around. He grabbed my shoulders. He goes, listen to me. He said, that was amazing. He said, you have a gift. He said, do you know you could do something significant with your life? And the moment he said those words, my stomach felt weird. Like I felt this bubbly feeling on the inside. And I'm like, what the heck is this, And then I realized it was the first time in my life I'd ever felt hope. And I'd ever felt like I didn't need to be defined by my circumstance. And it did two things to me, Jason. It totally motivated me to not be defined by my past. It made me realize that I could actually write my own story, which I thought was amazing. But the other thing was, it really did inspire me at that moment to realize if I came from that background and I had that potential in me, then so does everybody else. And I just wanted other people. I wanted all my sisters. I had 5 sisters and a brother. I had all my friends. I wanted everybody to feel that feeling that I felt, to feel that sense of hope and potential, essentially. So that's where it came from. It really came from that driving force back then at age 11. And like, honestly, it doesn't matter how much I do. It doesn't matter how much I do for people for free or how much I give value add to people, give away. I always feel like I'm being selfish, because that feeling of fulfillment and that amazing feeling of helping somebody else to feel like they're empowered and they can accomplish something is just such a buzz to me.
Man, I could feel the hair on my neck standing up, and I got like shivers when you were talking about that. I have moments like that for me too.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think there's levels to identity. I think when you're young, your identity is ascribed to you, and your moment is somebody telling you, hey, you could be great, because you didn't have any frame of reference to know otherwise, right? And I have moments like that as well. I think the next level, and I guess we should follow this out then. I think the next level of that, once you get to the place where people have ascribed to you, you're tall, you're skinny, you're pretty, you're ugly, you're smart, you're dumb, whatever, you're athletic, you can speak, is to look at those folks that we deliberately surround ourselves with to sort of reflect them as our identity. I think that's level 2. And I think we'll do a little exercise here. So like, if you had to tell me, who were the people early in your development as an entrepreneur or development as a man, who were the people or even the types of people that you looked to sort of prove out and like filter through to create your identity?
Oh my goodness, this is a super interesting question, actually. Because if I go back just a tiny step there, one of the challenges I had even prior to that 11-year-old me, was the fact that growing up in the household I did, my parents had very much this view that if anybody had anything, they were evil, and they didn't deserve it. So anyone who was rich really didn't deserve to have what they had, and of course we, being poor, totally deserved what they had, but we don't have it. So it was this us and them kind of mentality. So I had a challenge with that growing up, where when I saw successful people, I felt that tension within me. So one of the things I realized very early on is I really don't like hustle and grind type people. I don't like people that take advantage of others, that are in it just for themselves and things like that. But that teacher, when I go back to that type of person, when I came across entrepreneurs that had that kind of DNA, that kind of personality, where they really wanted to help other people, that's what inspired me. So when growing up through the entrepreneurial years, the mentors that I had, the people that I looked up to, were always the people that were genuine, were genuinely nice, and wanted to impact others. So even now, even if I look at, people I look up to in the industry now, there's, your Brene Browns and your Pat Flynn's and people like that, work tirelessly on their craft and work tirelessly on building really successful company, but do most of that to serve other people, and in it are being really genuine and really authentic as well. So that's kind of what I look up to, I guess.
I'm going to push you a little further though. Were there people in your, like, where was the moment? So you have this 11-year-old moment where somebody ascribed to you, but when you were starting out, and were there anybody, because you live remote to a lot of the people that are producing content and media, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're because I do believe like a podcast or a great book or a course or something can sort of fill that role. But were there people like that neural network around you, and when this was just developing? Were those types of folks? Did you intentionally edit your community or anything, or no?
I don't know about intentionally edit, probably subconsciously intentionally edit, if that makes sense. But there definitely were people. I mean, and there's two significant ones I can think of right now. One of them was actually someone. It was a fleeting kind of encounter with them, but it had a really profound impact. And that was when I was a very young entrepreneur. I was still working in corporate. Well, I was working actually in a lab, funny enough, with a lab coat, and had long hair at the time, which people still can't picture because I'm bald,
Yeah.
and a long goatee as well.
Wow.
But I won tickets to a business breakfast, and it was the Oceanic rep or something for Adobe. I can't remember what his actual role was. But I remember I won tickets to this breakfast, and I'm like, man, I'm poor. Like, I was broke, early stages. I'm trying to build a business and trying to work in corporate. It was like, this is insane. And also at the same time, I just got married, and I think we had our first child on the way, actually. It might have been. But anyway, so I got tickets to this breakfast, and I'm like, man, I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to eat every bit of food there. I'm going to drink every ounce of coffee, and I'm going to absorb everything from this person.
Yeah.
The moment I walked in, I thought I had made a huge mistake, because I knew I had to go in a suit because it was a formal attire. So I didn't own a suit. Went down to a secondhand shop and bought a $10 suit. The worst suit you've ever seen, man. It was like gray, but shiny gray, double breasted. Like the sleeves were so long, they went almost down to my fingertips. It was terrible. And I had my hair tied back in a ponytail. But I turned up to this event feeling like I stand out. I don't belong here, and I sat at this table, and I have no idea what the people at my table were really wearing, but in my mind, it was like Armani suits, and,
Right.
everyone there had just made it, and I was this loser that didn't belong there. This was kind of the dialogue going on in my head. And I remember this guy started talking, and he was telling all this stuff, and he was so inspirational. He really was. And he was so connected with everybody there. He was a great speaker. He was really inspiring. But also I looked at his life, and I'm like, man, he came from hardship, which I thought was interesting. But now he drives like his car was one of the latest Audis, and he had the beach house on Bondi Beach in Australia and all this. I'm like, man, this guy's kind of made it. Imagine being like him. Imagine having his life. That would be crazy. And at the end of that, he kind of went around. He said, right, I'm going to go around the tables and ask if you've got any questions. And he was going around. He was at a couple of the tables before ours. And in my brain, I still remember this conversation. It was so weird. In my brain, it's going, okay, Vince, listen up. You got one shot to ask something intelligent here. You don't belong here, right? You've got one shot to ask him something that makes everyone go, ooh, maybe you do belong. Like, this is the weird inner monologues that happen in my head. And he came over, and I sort of realized he was standing right next to us. And he goes, oh, have you guys got any questions? And before I could even think about it, my mouth just said, I turned around and said, oh, at what point did you know you'd made it? And then my brain just literally went, dude, really? That's all you could come up with? What a stupid question. And I looked around the table, and I swear people were rolling their eyes, just going, oh, the young guy, Oh. But he surprised me. He turned around the speaker, and he said, actually, that's a really good question. And I almost went, is it? And he goes, because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. He goes, I'm going to let you in on my morning routine. And I had heard that morning routines were really, really powerful. So I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to write down every word out of this guy's mouth. I just want to absorb all of this so I can replicate what he's doing, So he said, okay, Vince, listen, every morning I get up deliberately early. So I'm like, deliberately, interesting, good point, deliberately early. I'm writing it down. He goes, I go straight to the bathroom. I'm thinking, okay, not to the kitchen, not to his emails. Cool, writing this down. He goes, I go to the bathroom. He said, I fill the sink with cold water. And I almost asked him what temperature, but I thought, no, just write down cold water. He goes, I splash the water on my face. I look in the mirror, and I go, ha, today's the day they find out you're a fraud. And I went, what? And he goes, I've never felt like I made it, Vince. He goes, very few people do. He said, I always feel insecure. I always feel imposter syndrome. I always feel all this stuff. And he kind of indicated around the table, and he goes, most of us feel that way. And I turned around and realized everybody at that table was nodding. And that kind of made me realize that I had as much right to be at that table as everybody else, because we were all actually in the same boat. Didn't matter whether I had the right suit or anything like that. We were all as insecure as each other. We're all human. We're all flawed. We're all just trying to make it, And And it really did inspire me. So those were the kind of people around me that could be open and honest about their own struggles and their own challenges while still building something really significant. That was the people that had a really big impact on me. And the other one was just a very, very good friend of mine who had built a number of big businesses. And I had launched my first business and it was a complete and utter failure, right? Just absolutely bombed straight away. And I realized I made so many mistakes with that business. I'm like, ah, damn it. So I was having a pity party with him. And I turned around and I said, oh man, it's not fair. You know, other people had all these like people in their life that could teach them all this kind of stuff. I didn't grow up in an environment like that. I had no one that could teach me even the value of money and anything like that, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I could tell he was getting a little bit sick of me having a pity party. But he said something really profound. He turned around and he said, look, Vince, do you realize everything you go through in life counts for something? Like everything you go through in life has value. And I went, well, I didn't quite know what he meant, but he explained it. And he said, look, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything you've gone through has helped shape you into who you are right now. And he said, and that's someone quite awesome. And it made me realize that instead of feeling sorry for myself for growing up in poverty or feeling sorry for myself for making these mistakes or not having the right mentor in my life or anything like that, I realized that actually it's taught me empathy for other people. It's taught me through my own mistakes how not to make that mistake again and maybe help other people not make that mistake. So that was a really important one, was the people that could go beyond what I was feeling, go beyond what I was going through and show me what's on the other side of that, essentially. So yeah, they were, and that I guess was intentional. That was somebody I always wanted around me because they really did lift me up and they really did inspire me. I didn't have access to a lot of really high profile entrepreneurs that I wanted to, just being in New Zealand in the days before, you know, Zoom and all those kind of things. It was a little bit difficult. We didn't really have too many figures over here, which I would count as mega successful or anything like that. But even now and then I would come across these people and they would genuinely inspire me.
Yeah, it's first of all, that's a fascinating story. And we're going to continue on that path, but you reminded me of something because one of the people who absolutely makes up my personality at this point, particularly if you find me leading you in a class in a gym, which doesn't happen anymore. Although this morning I did lead kickboxing because they needed a little fill-in.
Oh man, I wish I was there.
Yeah,
I need
well, maybe,
yeah.
maybe. But anyway, I had a drill sergeant that was a Southern gentleman from Tennessee, and he would never yell at you. He would never yell at you, but he would dig into you in a certain way when you disappointed him, and he would make you feel a certain way. And I love so much the way that his discipline so clearly came from love. And so I think there's a lot of people, maybe somebody listening to this episode right now who's been a part of my tribe at the gym, that would maybe reflect on that, because I can tell you right now, I didn't have access to high level entrepreneurs, but I did have a skill while I was in the military. Also, while I was in a behavior disorder school when I was young, I had the ability for when somebody would talk loser talk, I would reject it. You know, I was susceptible to like, hey, we're going to smoke this joint. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And hey, we're going to go break these windows. Oh, okay. But when somebody said like, we'll never be anything, I was like, nope, that's not true. You know, I don't know what that was, just in me. But so the next level, so we talked about people ascribing you identity, which you had an interesting story for, and now we talked about you looking outward to try and find reflections of identities that you might want to inhabit. I believe the third level of that is turning that lens inward to yourself, and I think the beauty of that is it becomes fractal and infinite when you do. Do you do that now? And if so, how, and what do you learn from that?
So is this looking inward at my own?
Yeah, like,
Well,
do you have any kind of a practice where you spend time thinking about your specific knowledge and experience, thinking about the impact that you've had in the past and how to magnify it out into the future, you know, thinking about how you can change from your current self to become something that is, you know, preferable to you? I don't know. It's your journey. I'm curious.
Absolutely, all the time, man. Absolutely, all the time. I mean, it's on multiple levels there as well. Because one of the things I do is I struggle with mental health issues, like it seems most entrepreneurs do. You know, we all have bad days. We all struggle with anxiety and stress and things like that. And one of the things I wanted to do was to make sure I'm always connected to my why. So I have my why, which is, you know, empowering people and helping entrepreneurs to grow successful businesses, essentially. And so one of the things I learned to do was, and I stole this from David Goggins, like he talks about the cookie jar. I took
Yeah.
that and I turned it into what I call the impact list.
Uh,
And I literally just write a list. I've got a Trello board I use for it, of every time I get a piece of feedback from a client or something significant where I've helped somebody, I actually record that. I put it down. I like copy and paste any feedback they've given me, or I write it out if they've told me verbally, etc. And I put it into this impact list. And the reason I do that is not for vanity purposes, but it's for on the days when I'm struggling, on the days where I get up and I go, I can't do this, like I just don't want to face the day. I don't want to jump on that call with a client. I don't want to write that piece of content. I just want to go back to bed and sleep off the whole day. We have those every now and then. On those days, I go to that impact list because it actually brings me back to the impact I'm having on other people. And that is quite inspiring for myself. So almost like trying to use myself to inspire myself.
mm,
But it also gives me perspective. And this is the thing I learned very early on. In fact, from my daughter playing netball, which I'll tell you in a sec, but was that perspective is everything. And my daughter, for example, she was a very talented young netball player. And for those that don't know, netball, it's basically like basketball, but you can't move when you've got the ball. And so she was very, very good at this game. But she came up against this really, like, honestly, super competitive team that was at the same level as them. And it was for the final. It was an incredible game. But one of the girls there was getting really frustrated at my daughter because my daughter would always intercept the ball. And she was really, really good at it. And this girl just got so frustrated, she decided instead of playing the ball, she'll play the player. And when my daughter intercepted the ball, she basically stomped on the back of my daughter's leg. And this game's played on concrete. My daughter went down, smashed her knee on the ground and gashed it open. So she got blood pouring down her leg, couldn't actually put weight on her knee, got up and you could see, and I'm like, oh man, I want to run out there and pick her up and save her. I think she was like 12 at the time or something. But I wanted to run out there and save her, but my wife's holding me back, going, calm down. And I watched my daughter and she put weight on the leg, couldn't put weight on it. So she's like, right. So she kind of hobbled a bit, moved over, quickly intercepted the ball again, passed it off to one of her friends, got into another position, intercepted the ball, and she's playing with this blood pouring out of her knee. Can't put weight on the leg or anything. And in the end, they won by like 1 point. It was incredible. And the full-time buzzer was like, man, all this. And my daughter's like, yes, you see that look on her face, like, we did it, we did it. And then she looked down at her knee, and then the tears started rolling down. And that's when she realized how much pain she was in and everything. And I realized when you're focused inward, everything seems overwhelming. Like if she focused on that knee, all that she could see was injury, was blood, was pain, was any of those kind of things. But when she was focused on her teammates, when she was focused on their outward goal, on the why that she was there, then that was insignificant and she could push through that. So for me, that was the interesting thing of saying, hey, look, if I've got this list of all these people that I've impacted, then when I'm having a bad day and I look at these people, I'm no longer looking inward. Now the inward, because if you understand how our focus works, if I'm focused out there on all these people, everything that's around me, like all the inward stuff, the insecurities, the fears, the anxiety, and all this kind of stuff is now in my peripheral vision, which means I'm not focused on it. And it just helps me to get perspective and it helps me to kind of push through in the day. And then the other thing it does, obviously, is it makes me realize if I don't turn up, I'm denying these people that impact. And that's not really fair. So I kind of have a responsibility for them as well. So I do a lot of work around that. But then I also do a lot of work around the trauma that I grew up with. And I surround myself with people that can help me with this. I've got a coach who does like EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, and tapping and some of this kind of stuff. And I have another coach who helps me with DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. So these are all modalities to help me to regulate my own emotions and to basically get past some of the limitations that I put on myself because of this past trauma. So this kind of helps me to process my feelings, process the pain that was around these different events, and actually move past those to step into a better future. So I do a lot of work around that. I think every entrepreneur has to be honest. Otherwise, you're just going to stagnate. You need to constantly be moving forward. Plus, I'm a constant learner, man. I always feel like I'm the dumbest guy in the room. So my goal is to not be the dumbest guy in the room and learn as much as I can. So even like, it doesn't matter what new technology there is, I have to learn that first. So that way, when I'm having a conversation with someone, I at least feel like I know what I'm talking about.
So if you're listening to this, you probably agree with me that Vince is an unbelievable storyteller. And he's told us stories about his past. And I think we just got some information about his present. Vince, tell us the story of your future.
Oh man, I can tell you what my wife and I planned. So
Yeah.
One of the things that's really important to me, because our youngest is 19. He's about to leave home in about a month's time, which is kind of crazy to think about. So we're finally going to be child free, which is awesome. But one of the things I realized early on is that you're only as strong as the people you surround yourself with. And my wife is just an amazing human being. She genuinely inspires me. She was trained as an early childcare teacher, but then realized that later in life, she had this calling to help people that were dealing with addictions, because we were surrounded by people that were dealing with addictive personalities and things like gambling addicts and drug addicts and alcoholics and all sorts of stuff. So she retrained at a later age to help these people and to move into this kind of stuff. So she literally has a job where she's saving people's lives. So I always thought that was inspiring. But also she's been the rock through most of my career, where no matter what mistakes I make, she's always there to forgive me. And no matter what decisions we need to make, we're always doing it together. And the highlight for me was when I had a very high paying job and decided that there was an opportunity to build a company called Common Ledger, where it would require me to leave my high paying job and have no income for 6 months, because we knew there was a 6-month track to raise $1 million worth of seed funding, and then we could build it from there. So I sat down with my wife. I've been telling her about this opportunity, and I finally said, look, I think now's the time, but we need to weigh up what that means. And she goes, okay. And I said, well, it's going to mean 6 months of no income, which means we'll be relying on your income and also our savings. But at the end of that, I'm very confident we'll raise $1 million worth of seed funding, which of course we did, and we'll be able to build a really successful business. So she turned around and said, well, that's interesting timing, because I'm at this stage of my life, because she'd always talked about doing the training to become an addictions counselor. And she goes, but I feel like now's the right time, which means I need to leave my high paying job and basically go with no income for 4 years while I train in this. And I'm like, interesting. So we're saying we're going to have no income at all for 6 months. And she goes, yep. But when have we never landed on our feet? And that to me was the sign that I'm married to the best woman in the world. I mean, we've been married for 27 years, man. It's just been an incredible journey, but also that she's got my back. So I want to reward that. I want to reward all the hard work that we've been doing through our life. And I still want to be able to help people. So our goal is really simple. We're going to be buying our dream home or building our dream home. And then we're never going to live there. We are just going to travel the world. I've got clients all over the world that I help with their businesses and things. We're going to travel to like Quebec, where we've got a number of clients over there. We're going to go over there. We're going to take them and their families out for dinner and just celebrate them and just, bless them. And then the next day, while we're all still hungover, we're going to run an event there and bring a whole pile of entrepreneurs in and inspire them and empower them. And then we'll stay for another week and have a holiday. And then we'll move off to Vancouver and we'll do repeat and rinse over there. Then we'll go to San Diego, repeat over there. Then we'll go over to Europe. So it really, the future for me is just scaling a lot of the work I'm doing, empowering others and helping them, but also empowering them to help other people as well. But doing it in a way that gives me the flexibility to be able to bless my wife and just enable her to live that life that we've always wanted since we were young, which is being able to travel the world and all the things that we had sacrificed to build what we're building now.
Yeah, I think there's only two possible outcomes for a great entrepreneur. You either have an unbelievably supportive significant other or a divorce. I don't think you can be a successful entrepreneur at a high level. Now, I could be wrong, by the way. This is just off the top of my head. But listening to you talk, I was like, yeah, I get that feeling. Separately, no, I'm going to even leave that in. I don't remember my train of thought. But if somebody's been listening to this, there's been an itch in the back of their head that we have to scratch. What is neuromarketing? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, basically, it's just understanding how the brain works. Essentially, it's just neuroscience, but from a marketing perspective. So a good example of this is understanding how the brain makes decisions. And this is where a lot of entrepreneurs fall over, by the way. So one of the things we realized with neuromarketing is there's kind of 3 components of the brain that are involved in the decision process, right? There is the reptilian brain, which is basically the part of your brain that keeps you safe. So it's the defensive part of the brain, essentially. It's not really involved in making a decision, but it's definitely involved in opting out of a decision. So that's when someone's, calling you up to try and cold call you or something, and immediately you're being sold to. So your reptilian brain's going, get out of this conversation. I don't want to be around. You're not making a decision on this. We're opting out of it. So that as entrepreneurs we deal with, and marketers we deal with relatively simply. We do things like testimonials, trust badges, reviews, all these kind of things, like all the different things that make people go, okay, this is a safe environment. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the other two parts of the brain which are very much involved in the decision process. One of those is the neocortex, which is the least evolved aspect of our brain. So this is the logical part of the brain. And this is where most entrepreneurs focus. So they think if I'm putting together an offering for someone, if I'm putting together a product page or something like that, or a landing page or a piece of copy, then I've got to list out every reason that they need to, every logical reason they need to buy this. So I need to list out all the benefits, all the features, the cost has got to be competitive, all of these kind of things, and they focus on that area because they feel like that is what makes people make a decision. But that's where we're wrong. Very few decisions are done purely in the logical brain. Only things like very low transactional ones where you don't even need to think about it. But for significant decisions, they're often made in the limbic system, which is the other area of the brain, which is the emotional brain. And I'll give you an example of this. I'm a huge whiskey fan, right? I love whiskey. I saw a Kickstarter a few years back now, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, saw a Kickstarter for these hip flasks. Right, but they are for whiskey lovers. So they are made of glass. They're not made of metal, so they don't taint the taste of the whiskey at all. Right, but it's a really thick glass, so you could throw these things on the ground. They're not going to shatter or break. They have a special overlay that goes over it, like a rubber membrane that goes around the glass, so that keeps it even more secure. But it also has a slot there, so you can actually see, which is genius, by the way. I don't know why hip flasks don't do this. So you can see actually how much whiskey is in the hip flask. Then they have a special cork system which keeps it really tight and things. And they're designed so that you could instantly sterilize these and put another whiskey in there without it mixing with the previous one. So I can put a 25-year-old Macallan in there, sterilize it, and then I've got a 28-year-old Glendronach or something along those lines, So as soon as I saw these, I knew I had to buy them, right? So I bought a 2-pack of them, like a bigger one and a real small one. And all of that was what I thought in the neocortex. It was all the very logical reasons why I bought that. Here's the problem though. I never use hip flasks. I never have. Like there's absolutely no reason for me to logically buy a hip flask at all. All those different benefits and features I just listed off are kind of irrelevant. The real reason I bought those hip flasks are what they say about me. And this is the emotional aspect of that. I bought them because when I just told everybody those features and those benefits, most people go, oh, Vince must know a thing or two about whiskey, which speaks to my identity because I want to be known as a whiskey lover. And the moment I tell you things like that, most people go, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that metal can actually, even stainless can taint the taste of the whiskey. I had no idea. I've never been able to taste that. He must be an expert in this. So by me buying those hip flasks, it had nothing to do with the logical reasons. It had everything to do with the fact that when I own these, I can tell people the story about that. I can come across as though I'm an expert in this area. So that's neuromarketing. It's going down to the real reason that we make decisions. Another example, which is often used in neuromarketing, is brushing your teeth. Because if you ask people why they brush their teeth twice a day, 99% of people will say things like, because I don't want tooth decay, I don't want any cavities, I don't want to have to pay to go to the dentist, I don't want, all these kind of things. They'll list off all the gum disease and all these kind of things. The problem with that is our brains don't actually think that far ahead most of the time. We don't generally make decisions all the time that affect, 5-10 years from now. We generally most of us live in the now. The real reason that we brush our teeth twice a day is because we, in our emotional state, in our limbic system, want to belong. And what's the one thing that happens if we don't brush our teeth every day or twice a day? We have bad breath and we get rejected by others, which is why most toothpaste marketing focuses on, it's all got the tartar control and all this kind of stuff. But every imagery in there is of two people very close together, because then you realize I can be close to someone without having bad breath. So that's the emotional reason that we brush our teeth twice a day. But then we justify that, just like I justified buying those hip flasks, with the rational aspect, with the neocortex stuff. So that is a very crash course on neuromarketing, but it really is understanding the way that the brain works. And when you understand that, it helps you to connect deeply with your customers and to be able to get to the core of their identity, which is like the holy grail for any marketer and any entrepreneur. If you can tap into their sense of identity, if them buying whatever it is that you have says something about them, something positive, something they want to be aligned with, then it doesn't matter what your cost is. to a degree, you know, like to a level, obviously. It doesn't matter what the cost is, they're going to buy into this. So that is neuromarketing.
It's fascinating. That'll be a clip. Quick question. Do you find that knowing who's behind the Wizard of Oz cloak when it comes to sales and marketing, do you find that makes you an easier sale or a harder sale? Because I have my own beliefs on me.
Oh, I'm going to say both, and that's not going to make sense for them.
Depends,
But
right?
most of the time, I'm very cynical. It's like when I worked on radio. I used to work on radio for years, and used to have to do the news.
Clearly.
When you have to make the news, you can't watch the news because you realize how much BS is on the news, and you realize how much of that is just some kind of spin because they're trying to manipulate. Like a great example, the All Blacks came out with a new haka. That's our national rugby team.
Wow.
This is many years ago. They came out with a new haka, and all of a sudden it was controversial. So that is the kind of the war dance that they do before a game, and suddenly it was super controversial because it was offensive to some Māori and all this, and we're like, wait, but these guys went through massive consultation process. They had Māori elders working with them to write this haka, to come up with this haka. Then you realize, of course, when you work in news, what actually happened is someone went out on Twitter and said, hey, is there anyone out there that's offended at this? And of course, some radical Māori activist said, yeah, I'm highly offended. Great, we'll give you the airtime. So I can't watch the news as a result of that. And some marketing has that effect on me as well, where anything that's false promises, anything that is unethical, anything that's manipulative in marketing, I cannot stand that. And I will not be sold to through those methods because I stand on ethics, right? It's really important to me. However, in saying that, if I see something that's really clever in marketing, even though I know I'm being marketed to, I'm like, oh, well played. A good example, I had a guy reach out to me with a DM on LinkedIn. And he first reached out. It was a great example of DM strategy, by the way. He reached out and he said, hey, Vince, I've just come across your profile. I see we kind of hang in the same neighborhoods. We have the same kind of networks. I thought it'd be great to get to know you. So I accepted his request. Then he followed up and he's like, hey, man, just thanks for accepting the request. Just going through your profile a bit more. Love what you're doing. He said, I actually would love to do something for you. I've written a book that I'd love to get your feedback on. If you give me your address, I'll send you a free copy. So immediately he's adding value to me. Now I know he's marketing to me. I know that's just a fancy lead magnet. And immediately he's got my address. And part of that, by the way, I had to give my email address and all this. And then he followed up a few days later and he goes, actually, I was thinking about you the other day. I'm actually in your town next week and would love to invite you as my personal guest to this event, which of course is an event where they're going to sell stuff to you. And I knew this, but it was such good marketing. I'm suddenly at the event, sitting on the back row going, well played, sir, well played. Now, I didn't actually buy what he had to offer because it wasn't suited, but it was really good marketing. So I could see the wizard behind the curtains. I knew what he was doing, but he did it in such an authentic way, and he did it in such a genuine way that I didn't mind at all.
Yeah, I share that. For me, it's more like I just don't show up at all if it's not good. But if it is good, I show up and I just like take the ride. Your hip flask story, there's easily 25 to 30 things within arm's reach of me right now, and certainly on that wall behind you that would qualify as that, right? Like this little thing that's like some sort of like it's like a $20 little cube that projects light. Anyway. Okay, so presumably you won't be able to help every entrepreneur in the world. And so at what point will you feel like, when will you know you've made it? Maybe is the question.
Oh, maybe I'll bring that back to the Adobe
I know.
guy and say,
that's
no
why
point do I feel like I've made it.
I said that on purpose, but like, is there a goal? Do you have like a finite goal, or where do you feel like your impact on the world that you would like for it to settle at the end?
It's an interesting question because I actually really help a lot of entrepreneurs with this and never do this for myself, where you go, hey, set yourself an audacious goal around that. And let's kind of try and bring that to, like, a good example of that is I've got somebody who wants to help 100,000 relationships to be restored around the world, which I thought is such a cool goal. But I never really set any of those kind of goals for myself because I actually find the fulfillment in helping people. So it's not like the fulfillment would be once I've achieved 100,000 entrepreneurs or something like that, or 100,000 successful companies, I will feel a sense of satisfaction. I actually feel that satisfaction with every person that I help and every company that I help. So it's kind of a strange one where I haven't really put that around that. I think for me, the mark of success will be a bit more flexibility in my life, and that ability, like I said, to be able to travel and know that I'm still helping people, but I can do so while sitting on a cruise ship or
Yeah.
sitting on in the Maldives, at one of
Can
the
I
over the water cabanas there.
can I ask can I reframe the question?
Sure.
Think of somebody who you respect who does something at a bigger level similar to what you do. What's the difference between you and them?
Oh my goodness. The difference between me and them is just, this is going to sound really vain for a moment, just how many people turn up to their events and how much impact they have on that level. Like a good example is Pat Flynn. When it comes to podcasting, I'm a huge fan of Pat Flynn, and I will get him on my podcast one day too.
Shout out to
But
Pat.
part of the reason that I'm a big fan of his though is because he has these huge audiences. When he goes to a conference, he'll get more people there than I would, that is for sure. But he does it in such a way where you feel empowered, you feel inspired, and he does it really authentically. So similar kind of goal around how he approaches it, but just on a larger scale. So for me, honestly, it'll be, filling a stadium somewhere of people and helping them to be inspired and things like that.
Wonderful. That's awesome. What is happiness to you?
Oh, wow. Happiness it's an internal thing for me. Happiness is it's that sense that, like I said, that sense of accomplishment and things like that as well. But it's also that sense of, like, one of my goals is, personally, not in my business, but one of my goals is to create an environment for my wife and my kids. Like, they're everything to me. And spending time with my wife is just like, I'm such a sap, honestly. I'm one of those true love romantics. I was in love with her the moment I met her, like, honestly, head over heels in love, like a brick to the face type scenario.
Yeah.
Even though she didn't know I existed for a while or anything, I was smitten, and that was it. But honestly, I love spending time with her, but my main goal there is to create an environment where she can thrive, and to create an environment where both her and the kids can feel inspired to take risks and inspired to be able to push themselves in a safe way and in a way that they get outside their comfort zone, but not in a incredibly scary way kind of thing, where they can see me pushing myself, so inspiring them to push themselves, if that makes sense. So
It
for me,
does.
happiness is that. It's seeing them accomplish what they want to accomplish. I'm like, my son's moving out in January. He's going out flatting. He's studying software engineering at university, and I'm so excited about that because I know the type of character that he's become, and I know the opportunities that are ahead of him, and seeing him step into that just makes me so happy. So that's it. And other than that, it's the simple things. It's playing with my toy lightsaber. It's going for walks in nature. It's just enjoying the moments, and it's something I'm trying to get better and better at. It's the ability to be able to kind of be present in the moment, sit out on the grass and actually just enjoy nature, sit out in the sunshine, enjoy the feel of the sun on my skin, that kind of thing. So it sounds very sappy and very woo-woo and everything, but that to me is happiness, man. It really is. It is just that sense of being in the now.
No, but and that's beautiful, man. I would also say that there has been a theme. I've asked similar questions to that, and there's questions that I've asked sort of rooting out for myself, especially
Yeah.
for those folks that I identify with personally. And there's a theme that you've demonstrated here today, and there's a theme that listeners may remember from other previous interviews, and that theme is sort of like happiness through positive impact on the success of others. It's almost like my
Yeah.
success is when you're successful because I helped you along in your path. And I think that's an
That's
interesting,
exactly it.
it's an interesting currency. So whether it's your wife and child, or whether it's or children, or it's your your clients, it seems like you're getting something from that. Have you given much thought to what that feeling is? Is it being a power broker?
Oh
Is it
yeah.
being a provider? Is it being the one with the information? What do you
I'll
think?
give you an example of that, man.
Yeah.
And this is a great example of how my wife always seems to trump me with everything she does. But I went to go and pick my wife up from work one day, and I'm sitting in the car, and I'm waiting for my wife, and I get these voice messages from one of my clients. And this was a woman who reached out to me because she heard me interviewing someone on my show, right? And she heard this person had gone through a really traumatic background, and this person turned around at one point in the show and they said, "Oh my goodness, Vince, I just realized I've never shared that publicly before." Now, obviously, I made sure she was okay with me putting that on the podcast, which she was, and she became a very good friend of mine as well, which was amazing. But this woman heard that interview and heard that point in the show where she said that, and said to me, "Look, I was listening to that, blah, blah. Can I tell you my story?" Now, I thought she was pitching to be on my show. So I thought, sure, not a problem. Jumped on a call with her, and it turned out to be not that at all. It turned out to be this woman was petrified. She had been through a really tricky life. Like, she had grown up in abuse. She'd been, physically, sexually abused multiple times. She'd grown up surrounded by drug addicts and by addiction and things, and had become a drug addict herself. And in doing so, she was around people that were not good for her, and they made a decision they were going to commit a serious crime. And she went along with that. And she, as she said, I made the decision to go along with that. As they were doing that, she realized this is wrong, and she just left, ran off, and turned herself into the police and said, I can't do this, but I was committing a crime, and owned up to it, and went to prison as a result of all of that. Wow. So it's, as part of that, she was also pregnant with her first child, and that got taken off her and put into the state. So very traumatic kind of background. Now, she had kind of turned her life around. She got out of prison and decided, I need to, build a business for myself, to provide for myself. So she created a VA company. And the reason she talked to me was she was petrified that people were going to hear her story, hear what she had been through, and never want to work with her. And I had to say to her, look, I'm going to be really blunt with you. There will be a small, very small handful of people that will be the case, but they're not your clients. They're just people who either have lived in a bubble somewhere, or live in this weirdly just purely black and white world that can't understand human beings and the fact that we're all one decision away from going to jail, probably, that kind of thing. So I said, look, there will be a few like that. And I said, but the other thing is, you're living in fear of this story, which is a part of you. You should never live in fear of this. Why don't you make it part of your brand? Why don't you make it actually part of who you are and own this? And as a result, we did something really interesting. She said, I don't want to do that because it's scary. And I said, well, I'll work with you and I'll help you with this. So came alongside her and helped her to understand her story. I took her through a thing called the Beats method, which is helping her to actually tell the story in a way that's comfortable for her. And 4 weeks later, she announced, guess what, Vince? I'm closing down my business, which, as a business coach and a marketing coach, is not what you want to hear, by the way.
Yeah.
But the reason she was doing that is because she was so inspired through the process that she actually wanted to pivot and just create a company that helps people that want to integrate back into society. And then I worked alongside her, helped her to publish 2 different books, helped her to launch a podcast, which is gone gangbusters. It's huge. And now she travels across the US speaking to different organizations about, incarcerated people and integration back into society. She's living her dream. And she left me these messages that just, like, honestly, I was sitting in the car crying my eyes out, man, but in a happy way. She said, look, you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You believed in me when I thought that I didn't, I was kind of limited by all of this stuff, but you saw the potential in me. So you came alongside and you helped me to achieve something I never thought I could achieve. And now I'm living a life that I'm really, really proud of. That feedback made me bawl my eyes out. And I'm sitting there. My wife gets in the car and she just looks at me and goes, what's going on? I said, oh. So I played to the message, and she goes, oh, that's sweet. I saved 4 people's life today. And I went, oh, yeah, okay, you win. Obviously, she's really supportive, but it was hilarious. Yeah. But that, for me, that kind of feedback, that is exactly that feeling. That is exactly that feeling of happiness from their success that I get. It was hearing that by the things that, basically the values that I have, when you hear the feedback that aligns with your values, and my values are believing in everybody, like believing in their potential and believing that everybody has that seed of greatness in them. So when that value aligns with the feedback you're getting, that to me is happiness. That to me is an incredible sense of fulfillment. So yeah, I think about that all the time. I want that for every one of my clients. I want them to come back to me and go, I didn't believe in myself, but you believed in me. And now I've accomplished that thing that I didn't think I could accomplish before. So yeah, that's something I think about quite regularly.
It's fascinating. Well, Vince, there's 2 questions that I ask everybody that come on the show, and I'd like to ask you those 2 questions now. Are you ready?
I'm always ready.
All right. The first question, Vince, is if you had access to unlimited financial capital, how would you profitably grow your current businesses?
Oh, man. Okay, first thing I do would have to be scale, which is employing more team and things like that as well. So to scale the kind of work I'm doing, I'd need to find clones of myself. Actually, if I had unlimited technology, I'd just clone myself. That'd be awesome. So I'd have some great conversations with me. But it's about really scaling the work that I'm doing, but then being able to step back from that and looking for different ways to be able to impact others. So
Mm.
I would scale the books that I'm writing. I would be able to launch different. Oh man, you've got me excited now. There's so many different things I'd want to do there. So it really is about scaling the work that I'm doing, though.
Is there any certain types of hires that you think would be impactful? Are we talking labor? Are we talking VA? Are we talking creative? Are we talking marketers? What are you thinking?
I'm actually thinking more other coaches, other people that can inspire others as well. But also one of the major hires just has to be a COO, a chief operations officer, someone that can do the admin crap that I hate doing, or can at least facilitate that admin crap and get the VAs to do the work that's like the stuff that sucks the life out of me. So if I can focus on the stuff that energizes me, the creative energy, all those kind of things. I mean, this is part of the challenge of having ADHD. We're always trying to be in that creative energy. So if I can hire someone that can keep me in that space, I think that's going to accelerate things majorly. But when I have to get into the weeds, when I have to get into the day-to-day, and even when you've got a team, you still have to do that from time to time, because obviously you've got to lead the team and things like that. So yeah, that'll be the hires that I focus on.
Yeah, that's interesting. Also, not for nothing, I know people that are fractional integrators, and that's exactly what they do. They support visionaries like you. But either way, the second question is, if you had to give up every type of business, every business you've ever had, and start something totally new that you've never tried before, what do you think that might be?
Oh my goodness. Children's books. And saying that, though, that's slightly cheeky, because I have actually written a children's book, but I've never published it before. But
Okay.
I like, honestly, I've seen children's books before that are genuinely inspiring. I still remember when I was a kid, I used to read all the time. Even with ADHD, it was still something, because children's books are usually a lot shorter. Something that really inspired me. So having those books that can challenge the way that you're thinking, having those books that can actually entertain you while educating you and things like that, that would be exciting for me, man. Like, honestly, to be able to inspire kids to be better versions of themselves would just be incredible.
Oh, that's a beautiful answer. Also, shout out to John Mashney. We interviewed somebody recently who's like a corporate lawyer who also writes children books with his daughters. They co-write children's books. So
That's
I encourage
awesome.
you to do that. I think it's
Yeah,
a
well,
good money.
the first children's book I've written, which we're just getting the artwork done for it now,
Oh,
was
that's so
actually
cool.
one I wrote with my kids. It
Oh, that's
literally
beautiful.
was trying to tell them about Santa Claus, and my son just looks at me. He was 4, and he looks at me like, "Really, Dad? Do you think I'm stupid?" So we had to write our own version of that story. So we combined all the traditions and came up with the Christmas Ninja, which is just so much fun. So
Wow, that's great. I can't wait to see it. Well, Vince, if anybody is still listening, it means they love you. So how can they get a hold of you?
Well, I make that super hard, Jason. Nah, kidding. I make it real easy. Just go to chasingtheinsights.com. Honestly, it's where you'll find everything. You can book a free strategy call with me if you're struggling in any area of marketing, or you want to dig into neuromarketing stuff. I always freely give my time there. But you also see links to everywhere you can connect with me on social media, links to my podcast, links to my books. Just connect with me. Unless you're a spammer or someone unethical, don't bother, because you'll get a rude reply. But if you're someone genuine who wants to make an impact, who really wants to connect with someone, just reach out. I'm always eager to connect with new people.
Wonderful. Vince, thank you so much for sharing your stories, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. It's been an absolute blast.
All right, till next time.